So yesterday we learned about how we can create our own image with the production ready setup with the help of fast API, and we have also run that image on browser because it was a detached process, right? So today we'll learn about, or we'll talk about most important topic in Docker, and that is Docker ignore, right? So if you have used Git, consider the docker ignore as git ignore but for Docker builds, right? So what it does is that it basically tells Docker that do not send the files that are mentioned inside the docker ignore into the image, right? So so when we use the command that is docker build uh, and this dot, or let's say when we basically uh, use the command that is docker build t my image and this. So what it does is that it basically sends entire folder to the docker daemon, right? Then it starts building the image, and without a docker ignore, a huge build context is given to the image, or in order to build the image. It makes your build slow. It makes your secrets gets copied to the docker image, which is very big mistake in startup or any company that you are working. And the size of the images also increase. So now let's take one example. Suppose this is your folder structure. It's a very common folder structure that everybody has. So basically, let's say we have a Docker Fast API. Consider the project that we have created in part 2, right? So inside that thing we have created couple of files, like we created main.py, we created a docker file, right? So let's say that we have this much files, that is main.py, requirements.txt, docker file, .env file, PyCache, virtual environment, and .git, right? So these three files are automatically created. So and this .env where we basically keep our secrets. So we don't want these files, these unnecessary files, along with these two important files to go inside the docker image, right? Which may lead us to the big trouble. So in order to solve that problem, docker ignore is basically used. So if we used, or if we didn't use docker ignore, our virtual environment keys gets copied, a git folder gets copied, and .env folder also gets copied, which um, the risk of the security increases, and the build size also gets increases. So basically it makes security risk plus slow build, right? So that's the reason why a docker ignore is really very important. As I said that consider docker ignore as git ignore of docker, right? So let's do one thing. Let's open the same project that we created in part 2, and let's try to create a docker ignore, right? So uh, first let me go towards the terminal, and here you can see uh, the folder that we have basically used. Let's say I'll go with this folder, that is docker python, right? And here you can see this files that we basically added over there. Now let's open the terminal, sorry, let's open the VS code, and let's wait for a couple of seconds. And here you can see it has opened some different uh, folder. So let's open the correct folder that we actually want. So here let me select a docker python, and here you can see the files that we have created in part 2 of our Docker series. Let me close this once. Now let's uh, let me try to create dockerignore, and here you can see dockerignore is basically created. Now what contents we should put inside the dockerignore, right? So inside the dockerignore we could put these contents. So here we are back to our node screen, and here you can see that what all contents you should put inside the dockerignore, right? So the first thing is basically this Python. You need to put all these files, that is pycache.pyc, pyo, .pyd. You don't need to pay attention for this as of now, and star basically means that all the files whose extension is .pyc, you need to ignore that thing. So that's the reason why the .star is basically used, right? Then this virtual environment basically when we want to create our own virtual environment, at that time this folder is automatically created, so you need to ignore that thing as well. And .env is when we create secrets or anything, right? And this .git when we are putting our project inside our GitHub, so at that time the .git folder is created. You don't need to pay attention for this. And this is for Docker. You need to also ignore Docker file and dockerignore, because they simply just increases the size of your build. So that's the reason. Now let's do one thing. Let's try to put the content inside the dockerignore, right? So let's head towards the VS Code, and the first thing that will basically ignore is all the Python thing. So let me put this a pycache, as I said. Let me put pyc, and let me put this .pyo. It's auto correcting, and let me put this pyd, right? So for Python it's done. We don't have any kind of virtual environment, so don't need to put any kind of virtual environment out there. Okay, so if I created a .env over here, and inside the .env I simply put secret, right? So and inside the .ignore let's say virtual env. For that you need to simply put .env and slash, right? So it will ignore all the envs, right? And we are not using git, so no need to put git over there. We are not using any kind of OS store or anything. And you need to put docker over there as well. So let's put docker file and dockerignore as well, right? So inside the dockerignore you need to put these things, because currently we need to put we need to ignore all these things, and we need to only put the content that is necessary, right? So we our dockerignore is ready. Now let's try to build the image by using all these things, right? So let's get back to this node board once again, and let's check is everything okay. So yeah, we have put all the thing that is necessary, and now the thing is that we need to basically build the docker image. So let me simply build the docker image. Build t name of the image will be my py app, right? And we want this inside this directory, current directory where the docker file actually is. Now let me just hit enter, and here you can see it's basically built in. Now let's check whether the image is been built or not. So here you can see that image is basically been built. Now if we try to run that my Pi app, so it basically gives the utils added because it's the same file, same project that we have created in part 2. So now the main thing is that we need to go inside the container and check whether it actually ignored the file or not. So the command for that is docker run it flag. It basically means interactive terminal, my Pi app, and you need to go inside bin and bash, and we are inside the container. Now let me check the contents that are moved inside the container, because we have ignored couple of things right inside the docker ignore. Now let me run ls, and here you can see it has exactly pasted the files that we intended it to. It has pasted app.py and utils.py. It has ignored these files, that is .env docker file and git docker ignore. So we have successfully created docker ignore. We have put all the things that it needs to ignore, and we have successfully built the container. We run the container, we went inside the container, and we checked that all the contents were all the contents that were actually intended to go inside the container were actually there or not. So yeah, we have successfully used the docker ignore, and here you can see the results, right? So let me just exit through the container, right, or exit from the container, whatever. So let me get you back again to this node board. So the pro tips: you need to always ignore the files, whether it's inside .git ignore or .docker ignore, and that is virtual environment .git, .env and PyCache. You should always ignore that, and you should never copy secrets, SSH keys or tokens, right? Now the step was to check the proof, and we have already checked the proof by going inside the container and actually checking that whether it has actually ignored it or not, and yes, it has ignored. So this was it for today's video. In next video we'll learn about how we can go much deeper into the docker, like let's learn about docker context, and after that we'll try to create a fully CI/CD pipeline by hosting this image on the cloud platform like AWS, EC2 and all. And we will also work with GitHub actions, right? So this was it from my side for today's video. So if you like this video, do like, share and subscribe, and till then, happy coding, and I'll see you